bit about the San Francisco 49ers. Kind of what's making you optimistic right now in the middle of training camp? What might give you pause about this year? To me, I think everything's on the table with the Niners.
What scares you most?
What scares me most? The fact that their best players are over the age of 30 in the NFL. That's what scares me the most. Outside of the quarterback. Now, Brock Purdy, if he can elevate this team, that's what gives me optimism, is the fact that Brock I think he's still got room to get better. Now, he's got to prove he can stay on the field.
Because the quarterback rankings didn't do him any favors. Nobody cares. But, early on, Brock was up there. Hey, let me ask you this.
Oh, the 707 saying Kuechly is great at broadcasting. Not pretty good.
All right.
We'll keep an eye out.
Netflix. Is it fair, if you ask me, Goo, what scares you most about the Niners? I say their division. The 4 games against 2 teams that I think could be in the Super Bowl, Seattle and the Rams. Is that fair? Too easy? Evan, I remember the Niners were the division, when they were going on their runs, man. Again, all the games are going to be tough against, but now you just look at Seattle. They're arguably, the Rams and Seattle are the best 2 teams in the NFC.
True. And they might be the 2 best teams in football.
Oh, but they'll be out.
See, that doesn't scare me much because what's the old phrase? Or to be the man, you got to beat the man.
Yeah.
If the Niners are going to prove that they are a legitimate contender, then I would want 2 games against the 2 best teams in the NFL, because if you can hang with them, if you can split those games.
You went 2-2 last year.
Which they did last year, then I think you got some action. Now, a lot of people, of course, were poking holes in some of the schedule stuff last year because you played Seattle week 1. You played the Rams on a short week on Thursday.
That did happen.
But still, I think it's ironic that they got absolutely handled by both those squads at home, but they won both of the road games. They won at Lumen, and they won down at Levi South.
And I should have asked Eric this. I'll ask you, Evan. In regard to touches, if I set it at 380 receptions and totes of the rock for McCaffrey, do you think would you take over or under? I'm fascinated to see the year after he had a lot of carries. And when you look at his profile, the year after, it's not pretty in regard to McCaffrey. How would you, 380, is Kyle going to spell him? Do we see black and others? Or do you think it's Goo, McCaffrey wants the rock, he gets the rock?
Well, I'll take the under. Last year he had 413 total touches in just the regular season alone.
Damn.
But the reason I would take the under is because, number one, he's only done that twice. Number two, it's not that Kyle won't use him. I just think that if he's on that pace, I don't know how he's going to play 17 games this year. Now, I think he'll play more than the 4 that he missed 2 years ago.
Last year.
With that, double Achilles tendonitis thing that he had going on. I think he'll play more than 4 games. But if he's on that pace, if he is used the way that Kyle Shanahan wants him to be, I don't think he can make it through a full season.
He was your best receiver, and I don't think that was by design. So hopefully, Pearsall's healthy, the Rook is out there, and they find a way with Kittle coming back. But I don't think that's by design, almost by default. That not only is, you expect this dude to take it 80 yards every time you give him the ball, and he handled it, Evan. He did it. We saw it. But, man, just the pounding he takes getting the ball when they throw it to him.
You're listening to 95.7 The Game, KGMZ FM and HD1 San Francisco, and Odyssey Sports Station, always live in the free Odyssey app and now broadcasting from the Laughing Monk Studios. 888-957-9570 is the number. Steve is in San Francisco. Hey, what's going on, Steve? Good to hear from you. How you doing?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? My connection okay? It was a little choppy there for a second.
I think I got you. Yeah.
All right, cool. Last year, everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong, right? All the wheels came off, and look at what they achieved. I know you mentioned strength of schedule, Evan, but you have to look at what the final strength of schedule was, right, to really get an assessment. They were 17th, 18th, which puts them right in the middle of the pack. So it wasn't a cakewalk, and it certainly wasn't, considering that they were the walking wounded and were playing guys like Eric Kendricks on the road in Philly 2 hours after he got his jersey stitched. Let's not minimize how insanely impressive it was to knock off the champs in Philadelphia, let alone the fact just beating Philly in Philly is always a tall task. So in terms of what gives me hope, and the beneficial byproduct of all of that was that it forced guys like Stout, Collins, Marques, Sigle. They were logging significant starting time and experience that maybe would have taken them a couple years to develop or would have only seen fractions of that time on the field. I think that's invaluable. Tonjes even emerged as a legit threat in the passing game, so that's going to help him while Kittle is still rested up. I think this team's battle-tested in that regard. They showed if they could handle what they did last year and do what they did, what can't they handle, right? Pearsall, this isn't ideal. I think they got Stribling because they already knew and probably feared that. And they thought, hey, best case, if Pearsall is good to go, then we have a competitive wide receiver room with a guy like Mike Evans and a future Hall of Famer at the helm with it. K'Lon Black, I think he's a real deal, and I think he's actually going to force Shanahan to stop finally riding CMC into the ground based on his skill set and his talent. Osa Odigizua is going to shore up, I think, the run defense, which was just so porous in the middle. Let's see. I don't think they're going to make a play for Vea, but if they do, all the better. So I think it's more that they have those superstars that are aging, but really it's that they don't have variance. Like they have the old vets, and then they have these young kids. Hopefully that also kind of re-energizes the older guys too. I think you're going to have a competitive wide receiver room. I mean, Stribling has a legit chance to be a number 2 in there, and it looks like he's going to have to be. K'Lon Black, I think, really is going to finally take chunks out of CMC's workload. So I think when you consider all of that and look at it with last year, all they need is just to not have all the wheels fall off. A couple are gonna. They already started to now. But I think if you just get a little bit better fortune, we don't need everybody, and we know that they're going to take their lumps. But if last year was an indicator, then I think they're going to be in good shape if they can just avoid getting hit too bad with the injury bug. And, yeah, Purdy, I'm a huge believer. I think that he elevates the team and makes them a lot better, and the best quarterback I've seen since Young.
Gotcha, Steve. No, appreciate it. High praise. Yeah, I'm with him there that I think the injury luck will slide back a bit in their favor. They were the most banged-up team in football last year.
Yeah, no doubt.
True, but I also think that the schedule will lean back the other way a bit.
Because 2 of your first 5, the Rams and Seattle, are in that.
I don't think that McCaffrey is going to stay upright in the way he did last year. And who knows? He's 30 years old. Maybe he takes a little bit of a step back. I think that the unit that I'm most interested to see how they kind of regress to the mean would be the defense. And I mean that in a positive fashion.
And Greenlaw.
Well, but okay, you bring in Odigizua, you bring back Greenlaw. Odigizua, I think, is more of a commodity. Like
no doubt.
You know what you can expect from him. He's good.
Yeah.
Greenlaw, you're just hoping to get something from him. And who knows, maybe by the end of the year, it's Nick Martin or one of these young linebackers.
Who did nothing last year.
No, but you're hoping that in his second year he can take a step forward. All right, so the defense. He brought up the Sigles, the Stouts. If you want to throw Renardo Green in there, you can.
You have
the young guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, but those players, they did get valuable snaps, but that's also why your defense wasn't great. And so either those guys take steps or Raheem Morris is able to do some more for them. Having Bosa back should help a ton. Having Warner back should help a ton.
What about Mykel Williams coming off injury?
Yeah, I mean, I still have my reservations on him because even beforehand, he wasn't that impressive when he was on the field. But hopefully, he gets a little bit better. You know, the Collinses, the West,
run than the pad.
Yeah, like the guys that he's talking about. I wonder how much the Niners can actually, how much of last season's inability to put pressure on the quarterback and turn teams over, how much of that was just kind of a statistical anomaly, and how much of that was because you don't actually have a ton of players or those best players got hurt.
No doubt. And, I mention the 2 Super Bowls all the time, the 4 NFC championship visits. And when I just think about the Niners defense under Lynch and Kyle on a good day, it's just nasty. And it was kind of weird just watching them. You'd mentioned 6-11 the year before, and, you watch what they do last year and still win 12 games. But I can tell you, it wasn't of that ilk or that model where they were just ferocious getting after the quarterback. And obviously it's going to take hits when you lose Bosa and Warner. But these are all exciting components going into this year's season to see if it can bring the Niners back to prominence. And they haven't fallen off. And for Eric, we had Eric Branch on. He shared with us from the Chronicle, hey, it was a soft schedule. But the bottom line is they got 12 wins. And I'm just looking here, Seattle, the Commanders, the Falcons, the Raiders, the Cowboys, and it's the NFL. There's nothing easy. But, man, they're going to be tested. They're going to be tested early and right out the gate. And you wonder if their coach is going to be there week one. I know that's the story that'll take care of itself, but that's a big deal, going up against the Rams Thursday night.
Which player do you think you're going to get the most from this season of the guys that are coming back from injury? George Kittle, Nick Bosa, and Fred Warner. Which of those guys? I love
the question. I'm going to go 54. I'm just going to go Fred. I just feel like, he's still at the highest of his powers. Not saying Bosa isn't, but even when Bosa last was healthy, we wanted to see more. Kittle, he's had, his Carfax report has grown to where he'll miss some games, but he comes back. But he plays, he goes 110 miles an hour every game. But 54, I think, is just revving to get back. And, Evan, I feel like he'll be the one to where it's like, damn, he missed some time last year? I can't tell. And I could be wrong, and hopefully it's all three,
Well, hopefully it is, but the reason why I ask that is I think when we're talking about the defense, if they're going to get back to being, maybe not the dominant unit they were in 2019 and 2021.
But stop Seattle.
Yeah, but if you're going to hang with the big boys, to me, it's got to be Nick Bosa because I don't see a ton of other pass rushing talent on this team. Odigizua is good.
But he needs help,
Michael Williams hopefully will be something. You drafted Romello Height, but you didn't get to the quarterback whatsoever last season. In fact,
you were last.
I think Cleveland Farrell was their leader in sacks. Yeah. I mean, Nick Bosa had two or three sacks in the first couple of games of the season before he went down, and he was among their top sack leaders at the end of the year. That's a problem. So Nick Bosa is the guy that I'm looking at and wondering how much he can get out of his leg that's now got 2 ACL surgeries on it. And he looked good. By all reports, training camp, no pads on yet, but he's looking big, he's looking spry, he's looking fresh. Of those three guys, I don't think anybody's expecting a ton from Kittle because that's going to be found money based on the Achilles tear along with his age. But Nick Bosa has to have a bounce-back season. And that's a lot to ask from a dude that underwent that ACL.
And I'm not going to be like I'm Greg Cosell here, but you've heard this a million times in your life. A secondary's best friend is a pass rush, and we talk about the youngsters back there in the secondary. I think Green's dealing with a hammy already, so hopefully he heals and he's ready to go. But, man, Ev, you got to get out after the quarterback, and that does not just Raheem Morris makes his job easier, but that back into that secondary, your safeties and your corners. I mean, when you can get after that quarterback up front, it changes everything. And last year, that was something they couldn't do.
This was from the other day with Mike Florio of Pro Football Talk discussing kind of what we're dancing around. And this is the idea that the Niners are Super Bowl contenders.
I think they're one of the Super Bowl contenders, and that it's a narrow category, but it's a broad description. But there's so many factors that go into it. We spend the whole offseason talking about changes that teams have made and where they're going to get better, where they're going to get worse. And then reality sets in, and it begins for the 49ers with the most important person in the organization not available to fully participate in the preparations for the season. Because of Kyle Shanahan, I'm a firm believer in the 49ers, if they stay healthy. We look at what they do the years that the injury bug doesn't happen. Last year, the injury bug did happen, and they still had a very good season. But the Shanahan situation, it's not a stretch to say he is the straw that stirs that drink. He is the guy that makes that team go. And he is going to get the most out of whatever talent they have. And he's going to will a team. He's going to game plan a team. He's going to scheme a team into being a competitor. He gets back quickly. They're in a position to kind of go about their business without a lot of attention, without a lot of expectations. They're in a position to have a good year. And, doesn't it seem to be that they tend to have their best years when it's not expected?
Yeah, well, the last
They've
part...
had good ones too, Mike, when it was expected. But I hear you.
The last part...
I said what I said.
Well, it caught me, the last line about not a lot of expectations. I'm getting the sense from 49ers fans that they expect this team to be good. Are you feeling that way?
Yes, because they've earned Kyle. And last year, I'm drunk and in love, Beyonce, and I get it, it's a soft schedule, but for that team to Gorilla Glue, duct tape, Elmer's glue, what have you, patch that bad boy up, just everything, talking about them, and get to 12 wins with a soft schedule, that just leads me to believe, man, they still got something. They have an identity. They know who they are. And I kind of threw this at you yesterday, and you answered, and I don't want to take shots at any other coaches in any other leagues, but just that Kyle component to this. If it's Forster and not Kyle, why do I feel like an NFL coach is missed more than if Kerr was missing a said game or Vitello wasn't in the dugout? I still feel like those ramifications aren't as big as Kyle walking up and down that sideline when he's mad or something didn't go right, getting in Brock's face. I could be wrong, but it feels like you need your coach more in the NFL on that Sunday than you kind of do in the other games. I could be wrong.
No, isn't that funny, though? So Steve Kerr's got 4 titles.
I know where
as just a coach.
Yeah.
But you're right. Kyle Shanahan means more to the San Francisco 49ers than Steve Kerr does. I think that's...
Now, is that just basketball to football, too, though? You know, it's just like, when Kyle's hot, he's hot. Like, Brock, let me holler at you. It's more of that, I'm going Spider-Man, that venom of, hey, man, the accountability, and you're going to get it right away. And I just, he's like Nikasi. She runs hot all the time. But I feel like if Kyle wasn't there, that would be a miss.
Well, they would miss a lot. And you heard from Florio, it's funny, he's discussing this idea of the window still being open for the Niners, and I kind of agree with him. But a lot of it has to do with Kyle Shanahan. And it's a guy who's been to the mountaintop but hasn't seen the promised land.
That's high praise.
He has not got a Super Bowl win. And still, he is just as important as anybody else. It's like, I would argue that Kyle Shanahan is the most important, head coach / manager in the Bay Area to their team. And some of that's by virtue of what he does as a play caller. But is there anybody other than Bruce Bochy that comes to mind?
I love that. And I wholeheartedly agree with you, man. And that's a hell of a compliment.
And it's not to take away from anything that Steve Kerr has done, but with some of these teams that Kyle Shanahan has had, and in particular the quarterbacks that he's had, he's gotten a lot out of these groups that not many head coaches in the NFL, maybe in history, could have done. And
could Andy Reid, and to piggyback off of that, just think about what I'm about to share with you, Evan. Jimmy Garoppolo quarterback 2 NFC championship games and a Super Bowl and had a lead. You can't tell me Kyle wasn't very important to the success of Jimmy Garoppolo with his warts. I don't know how many other NFL coaches could have done that with Jimmy Garoppolo. But then you can look at me, Evan, and say, well, he specializes in quarterback and offense. Okay, but miss me with that. I know what Kyle's bringing to the table, and a lot of times I criticize him, or I get mad at him because he should have won. He should have a ring on his hand.
No, he shouldn't, but I understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
he should not have a ring on his hand because his teams didn't have more points than the other team in the biggest games.
In the fourth quarter, they had a 10-point lead. In the Super Bowl against the Chiefs, history could be altered. And then if you let me bring this to the approach to the jury with this.
You got a minute 15.
And you had a 10-point lead against the Rams in that NFC Championship game that Tart dropped the ball. Just saying. I know he don't have any. I got you. I do wonder if his best chance is come and gone. And it could very much be
that we're in agreement on.
I just feel the Rams and the Seahawks, you said the 2 best in the league. I said, yeah, you're right. Like that, you might be right.
But, it's funny because the Rams have always been a team that are willing to get aggressive, and they clearly felt like they were a Myles Garrett or a Trent McDuffie away, and they just went, they said, bleep it. Let's go get him.
Just think about that. They got Garrett. And, I'm getting tired of this storyline. Donald's coming back, Aaron Donald. But, Evan, the rich just get richer, man. And you start week 1 off against the Rams.